Hello again. If you're watching the video version of this thought, then you'll be able to see a photograph on your screen. It's a photo of some bare winter trees and grassy fields. The sky is blue with a few small patches of cloud, and there's part of a brick wall in the foreground. There's a bit of sunshine, so you can see some shadows from the trees and patches of shadow on the wall. But don't worry if you can't see the picture. This isn't really about the picture itself. It's about the experience of making it. It's a photograph I produced at the end of February, back when we were just starting to wonder what restrictions the onset of COVID-19 might impose on our lives. I was away for a few days on the second of my two probationers' retreats at Laund Abbey in Leicestershire. As I had done the previous year, I took my camera and spent some of the free time finding photographs. And so on this day I stood next to the brick wall in the picture, but as I set the camera up, the sun went behind the clouds. So I waited for the clouds to move so that the light would improve. The clouds did move, but there seemed to be a patch of higher cloud which stubbornly obscured the sun. I assume the winds weren't the same that high up as they were for the lower clouds. And so I stood there for 20 minutes while the sun stayed behind the thin high cloud before I had to accept what I saw as second best, because not all the time was free and I had to move on. As I walked back to the buildings, I felt that the message was that if we could experience all the depths of love, it would be overwhelming. So it must remain behind the thin, high cloud. I'm lucky that as part of my probationary period, the church provided those two retreats. Going away for times of pondering and prayer, of conversation and silence, has been a great help. I miss that kind of time. These, for me, are special times. They mark out a kind of rhythm of noticing what's there in front of us simply by having some time a step apart. Even if they're not regular or frequent events, it's a kind of Sabbath pattern. And perhaps the liturgical seasons function in a similar way. I've said before that I'm not a great stickler for these things, but we do seem to need a rhythm. And here we are in Advent. It's sometimes tempting to go chasing the experience, though. I like retreats, so I must keep on going on them. I always get moved by this particular hymn, so we have to have it every time. Whatever does it for you, or for me, it's tempting to go chasing it, like a photographer chasing the light. Because our worship is an experience, it can be tempting to start to need the experience, to be after an experience of God. But could we handle God? If God is just the big old straw man in the sky the skeptics imagine, then why not? If God is just a Sunday school milk and no solids God, why not? But what if God was beyond our categories of thinking, beyond our ways of knowing, beyond what we can take in with our senses? What if God has to hide behind the thin, high cloud? If this God thing is true, could we actually handle it? Chasing the experience starts to sound quite a bit like addiction. You get a little bit of something and you need more. You get used to the sensation, so you need more and more to get something like that initial kick. In fact, you get so used to whatever the experience is that you need more and more just to be able to start feeling normal again. I sometimes wonder whether we need to take care in our religious experiences and in our worship to consider addiction as a possibility. I wonder whether this might be part of the reason why sometimes it is so hard to worship in a way we're not used to. It just doesn't feel right. If we ever catch ourselves thinking worship doesn't feel right, I hope we can stop to wonder why it doesn't feel right and whether it feeling right is actually what we're aiming for. Can we get addicted to God, I wonder? The big news this week is the approval for use in the UK of the first vaccine for COVID-19. It won't be quick and there's plenty still to do, but from now on it starts to look like some kind of beginning of the end. Vaccines work by stimulating our bodies to fight off a disease. They might give us a small enough amount of the disease to be safe, or some reduced or distorted part of the makeup of the virus or whatever, so that our body is tricked into fighting off the real thing if it comes our way. If we can't handle the fullness of God, might getting a small glimpse actually be inoculating us against God? Plenty of people do indeed seem to have been inoculated against God. They've seen a small or distorted amount and it's put them off for life. Sometimes we have to admit that this is because the distortion has meant that what they received is very far from God. And sometimes all they've seen is the milk and no solids Sunday school God, the big old straw man in the sky. How could we tell? How could we tell whether someone has seen too little of God or too much of something which is not God but which was presented to them as if it was? Well, apart from cases of abuse or oppression perhaps, I don't think it is easy to tell. It's not easy to tell because we can always resort to something like the no true Scotsman idea. If we think someone has seen a distortion, then we might think that, oh well, no true Christian would have done or said whatever it was, so whoever it was can't have been a real Christian. But as ever, I think people are more complex than that. And so, by their fruits might be the nearest we can get to telling. Although a limited experience of God can be the too cold porridge of inoculation, or the too hot porridge of addiction, it can also be the just right porridge of gift, of revelation, of love. And as we approach Christmas, we Christians see the way out of not being able to handle God in the person of Jesus, in whom we see the fullness of God within our human parameters, in whom we see the light getting through even the thin high cloud. Last week I said, enjoy your crisps. So I suppose this week it's enjoy your porridge. God bless. See you soon.